My ex-husband moved his mistress into our house 3 weeks after the divorce finalized. Not a new house, not an apartment, our house. The one we picked together 14 years earlier. The one I painted while 7 months pregnant. The one where our daughter learned how to walk holding onto the kitchen cabinets. And somehow, watching another woman carry groceries through that front door hurt more than the affair itself. I found out because my neighbor sent me a picture. Not maliciously, not dramatically, just a quiet text at 8:14 in the morning. "Hey, I thought you should know." At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Her car in the driveway, boxes near the garage. My ex standing beside her, smiling like he had just upgraded his life. Then I noticed something worse. She was using my patio furniture, the same set I spent months saving for, the same one he once complained was too expensive. And suddenly, I realized he had turned my entire life into a replacement set. I stared at the photo for a long time without responding, my coffee getting cold beside me, my chest tight in that slow, heavy way grief sometimes arrives. Because no matter how prepared you think you are for betrayal, there's always a second shock afterward, the moment the person stops hiding it. And that moment hurts differently. The divorce itself had already been ugly. Not explosive, not screaming matches. Worse, cold. Everything became paperwork and strategy near the end. He stopped arguing emotionally, started talking like a businessman managing a difficult negotiation. Let's be practical. We both need to move forward. This doesn't have to be emotional. That last sentence almost made me laugh at the time, because affairs are emotional by definition, especially when they destroy a 14-year marriage. But by the final month, he acted almost relieved, like he had already emotionally left long before I discovered anything. And maybe he had. The affair started with late meetings, then networking dinners, then overnight conferences that somehow never included photos anymore. I noticed the distance before I found the proof. Women always do. You notice when conversations become shorter, when someone stops looking fully present inside their own life, when they start treating your relationship like a responsibility instead of a connection. By the time I found the messages, I think part of me already knew. What I didn't expect was how quickly he would replace me publicly afterward. 3 weeks, 14 years reduced to 21 days. My phone buzzed again. Another message from my neighbor. Her kids are there too. I felt physically sick reading that, because suddenly I could picture it clearly. Another family eating dinner at my table, watching movies in my living room, sleeping in the bedroom I spent years trying to turn into a home. And the worst part? He looked happy. Not guilty, not conflicted. Happy. That's the image I couldn't stop replaying. Around noon, my lawyer called about some remaining paperwork. Routine post-divorce issues, nothing unusual. I almost ignored the call completely. But near the end of the conversation, she casually asked, "Did he refinance the property yet?" I frowned immediately. "What do you mean?" A short pause, paper shuffling. Then her voice changed slightly, more careful. "He requested information from the bank yesterday." Something inside me sharpened instantly, because the house wasn't fully his yet. Not legally, not financially. And suddenly, for the first time since the divorce, I stopped feeling powerless. After the call ended, I just sat there staring at the wall, because for the first time in months, something about the situation didn't feel finished. During the divorce, he fought aggressively for the house. Not emotionally, financially. He kept saying our daughter needed stability, that moving would disrupt her routine. At the time, I believed him. Now I realized something else. He never wanted the house because of memories. He wanted it because he had already planned another life inside it. And somehow, that realization hurt more than the affair itself. I called my lawyer back 20 minutes later, asked her to explain exactly what she meant. There was another pause. longer this time. Then she said carefully, "He hasn't secured full financing yet." I sat up immediately. "What does that mean?" "It means the mortgage transfer hasn't finalized." My chest tightened, because suddenly, all those rushed demands during the divorce started making sense. He had pushed hard to keep the house, without actually having the money fully approved to maintain it. And the more my lawyer explained things, the more reckless the situation sounded. He had assumed the refinance would go through quickly after the settlement, but interest rates had changed. His debt-to-income ratio shifted after the separation, and apparently, the bank wasn't moving as fast as he expected. "Worst-case scenario?" I asked quietly. My lawyer hesitated. "If he can't refinance, the lender could eventually force a sale." Force a sale. I repeated the phrase in my head several times because suddenly the image of him smiling beside his mistress in my driveway looked different, less secure, less permanent. For the first time in months, I could finally see cracks in the version of control he kept pretending to have. That evening, my daughter came home unusually quiet after spending the weekend there. I didn't ask questions immediately. I never wanted her to feel trapped between us. But while I was making dinner, she finally spoke on her own. "She moved her stuff into your office." I stopped cutting vegetables instantly. My office, not his office, mine. The small downstairs room where I used to work late nights while building my consulting business. The room with my bookshelves still built into the wall. The room he once said felt too personal to touch after I moved out. Apparently that changed quickly. I forced my voice to stay calm. "Oh." My daughter kept talking quietly while staring at the counter. "She said it makes more sense for her workspace." Workspace? I almost laughed again. Not because it was funny, because betrayal eventually becomes so disrespectful it stops sounding real. Then my daughter said something that completely changed my mood. She asked Dad if the bank thing was serious. I looked at her immediately. "What bank thing?" She thought I couldn't hear them. My daughter shifted uncomfortably. But she asked if they were going to lose the house. Every nerve in my body suddenly woke up, because now I understood something important. The mistress knew, which meant the financial situation was bad enough that he couldn't hide it from her anymore. And if she was already worried, things were probably worse than my lawyer realized. That night, after my daughter went upstairs, I opened my laptop and started researching mortgage note purchases. At first, it felt ridiculous, almost absurd, until I realized something. The small regional bank holding our mortgage had recently sold part of its distressed portfolio to outside investors. My heart started beating faster, because I still had liquidity from selling my company shares 2 years earlier. Enough liquidity to do something completely irrational, or completely strategic. And somewhere around 1:30 in the morning, an idea formed that was so extreme, I actually scared myself thinking it. What if I didn't wait for him to lose the house? What if I positioned myself to own the debt before he even realized he was drowning in it? I barely slept after that, not because I was emotional anymore, because my brain wouldn't stop calculating. For months, I had been reacting to his decisions, his affair, his timeline, his control over what happened to our marriage. And suddenly, for the first time, I had leverage. The next morning, I contacted someone I hadn't spoken to in years, a former investor I worked with during my consulting days. I kept the explanation vague at first, professional, detached. But halfway through the conversation, he interrupted me. "Wait, this is personal, isn't it?" I stared out the window for a second before answering. "Yes." A short silence. Then he laughed quietly. "Well, personal deals are usually the most motivated ones." Over the next 2 weeks, everything moved faster than I expected. The bank really was unloading distressed notes quietly, not publicly, not dramatically. They wanted problematic loans off their books before the next quarter. And my ex's mortgage had become riskier after the refinance delays. By the third meeting, I finally asked the question directly. "If I acquire the note, what happens?" The investor leaned back in his chair. "You become the lender." The lender?
Such a simple phrase. And yet the moment he said it, I felt the entire balance of power shift. Because suddenly, my ex wasn't just living in the house. He was living inside a financial timeline he no longer controlled. And he had no idea. The acquisition finalized 19 days later. I signed the documents in complete silence. No celebration, no dramatic revenge speech, just one signature, and suddenly the mortgage payments for the house he fought to keep belonged to me. The strangest part was how calm I felt afterward. Not victorious, not healed, just clear. Because this stopped being about revenge the moment I realized something important. He never actually valued the house. He valued winning it. There's a difference. 1 month later, he called me unexpectedly. For the first time since the divorce, he sounded stressed, actually stressed. He tried to sound casual at first, asked about our daughter, made awkward small talk. Then finally he said it. The bank situation got complicated. I almost smiled hearing the word complicated.
Because that's the same word he used to describe his affair when I first discovered it. Complicated. I stayed quiet. Let him keep talking. Apparently, the loan servicing department had changed. New contacts, new paperwork requests, new pressure about missed restructuring deadlines. He sounded frustrated, confused, scared. And for the first time in years, I realized something almost unsettling. I was listening to a man who genuinely believed he still understood the situation. Meanwhile, he had absolutely no idea who was sitting on the other side of it. Then he said something that made the entire moment surreal. She's freaking out about losing the house. She, not we. She. Even now, he was emotionally organizing his life around protecting the woman he destroyed ours for. And somehow, that finally killed the last remaining part of me that still felt attached to him. A week later, I drove past the house for the first time since the divorce. Her car was still there, lights on inside. My patio furniture still outside near the pool. But this time, the house looked different to me. Not because the memories disappeared, because ownership had changed in a way they didn't understand yet. He thought he had replaced me inside that home. What he didn't realize was that every single month, the roof over their heads answered to me now.